All right, today you are going to be creating and mixing your own color wheel. And so first, of course, put your name on the top in whatever block you are. And then there are questions at the bottom. List the primaries, secondaries, tertiaries. You can leave those empty for right now and answer at the end. But I do want you to answer, what do you add to a color to tint it? To create a tint, you add white. What do you add to a color to shade it? To make a shade, you add black. And then what do you add to a color to create a tone? You add gray. And then next, using a pencil, I'm going to use a Sharpie so you can see. We are going to label where the color will go, where the tints, tones, and shades will go. And so your color or your hue is going to go in this large box. The tint is going to go in the small box. And then we're going to put the shade and the tone on the outside. So you don't have to label every slice of the cake here. You can just label one. But then this part you should do because it will be very helpful. You always start with a primary color. So I am going to put the letter P right here for primary. Next, there will be a tertiary, secondary, tertiary, primary, tertiary, secondary, tertiary, primary, tertiary, secondary, tertiary. You don't have to list the colors. We can do that at the very end. And then you will get out your materials. You should have a water cup. You will have a couple brushes. Might be flat brushes like this one or rounded. You should have a rag or a paper towel to dry your brush. That will be very important. And then you will have a palette. And as you can see, my palette is already in use. I've had to practice this color wheel a couple of times. And so I don't want to waste any of the paint I've already been using. You will get the three primaries, yellow, red, blue. And you'll also get white and black because every color we need will come from these colors. Now, your blue, you might have a warm blue or a cool blue, which is going to make your purples and greens look different. So my greens and purples are going to be a little muted today. And that's just because of the blue that I am using. And so the first step, I always start at the top, and I always like to start with a darker color first. So my first primary is going to be red. So I'm going to go ahead and just paint the color, the hue, in this little box. Doing my best to keep it in the lines. Okay. I have paint, red paint on my brush. So instead of washing it to make a new color, I'm going to go ahead and make the tint, the shade, and the tone. And so I have red. I'm going to just pull a little out here. Put it in some piles. I am going to add a little bit of white. I don't know if you can see how much white, but it's like a smidge. And I'm gonna mix it. And I could add a little more if I wanted. But now I've created a tint of red by adding white. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna paint that tint. Right here. And then I am gonna wash my brush after that. I'm trying to keep my colors as pure as I can. Now I've already mixed gray. You're gonna need a bunch of gray. So to do that, you take white and like the same amount of black, and you're gonna mix it together to create a gray. And so I've already done that. I already have a bunch of gray right here that I am going to use. And so I'm gonna pick up, again, just a smidge, tiny, tiny, tiny bit, and I'm gonna mix it in that other pile of red. And I've created a tone. My tone goes on this outer edge. And you might notice with a tone, the color just becomes more muted. Doing my best to fill it in. Okay, so there's my tone. And now what I have left is my shade. I'm gonna wash my brush. There's a lot of brush washing when we do this. And so I'm gonna pull out a little bit more red. And now I wanna add a teeny tiny bit of black. And I'm gonna mix it to make my shade. I needed to add a little bit more black, so I did. All right. And I got my shade. So then you could go and you could do all the primaries. And now I'm gonna move on to my secondary. Now when I am mixing my secondary, like my orange, violet, and green, I want to make sure I have enough to mix my tertiaries. And so I'm gonna start with orange. And I always start with the lightest color, and I'm gonna take a substantial chunk from it. And then I'm gonna start with a little bit of red. You can always add more of the dark color if you need to. And that's actually looking like pretty good orange. My brush might have been a little dirty, but I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna add my orange in the right spot. Orange was made with red and yellow, so it goes in between those two. And then I have some orange on my brush. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna make a tone. Or not a tone, I meant a tint. Using that same orange. Okay. Then I can do my tint. A little smidge of gray. It also doesn't hurt to wash your brushes really well after painting for a little bit, just to keep the colors clean. Now there you can see I added too much black to my orange. There we go. All right, I got my secondary. I'm gonna go ahead and make green and violet, and I'm gonna do the tones, tints, and shades. Okay, by now your palette is looking like a mess, but that's okay. We are now on to our tertiary colors. I really want my brush to be clean. So when you're making the tertiaries, like red orange or red violet, yellow green, you want to take your secondary color. So if I was gonna make red orange, I'm gonna, if I can, I'm gonna swipe up a bunch of orange. And then it's red orange, so I'm gonna add more red to it. And you can see, I might add a little more red. I got a nice red orange. And then again, you're gonna create the tones, tints, and shades. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna make my yellow orange before I add, just so you can see how that's gonna look different. I'm gonna scoop up whatever orange I have left. And you know what? I don't have much, so I'm actually gonna make some orange. Or I'm just gonna make yellow orange. I'm mostly yellow. Add some more yellow into that. And you can see on my palette, that is definitely a yellow orange next to a red orange. So I'm gonna go ahead. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and finish with my tertiaries and my tints, tones, and shades.